for another Naz Chat, and I'm here with Todd Gates. And Todd, I understand that you may have played some football, even though you're a little fellow. You played a little bit of football. Is that right?
Well, that is right. It's kind of funny. It's not probably the most important thing I ever did, but it may be the most interesting. No, I started out. Played football for 20 years. My dad took me down to the park to get started playing when I was 5, and I played pretty much all the way through the pros. So, and I had a year at pros. Dad wanted to toughen me up. Little did he know.
So you played at Bowling Green, right?
Yeah, I played at BGA. Played at Columbus Northland, which is kind of close, and then I went. I got some awards there. I was all state and what have you, all city league, and it was a big athletic school, so it wasn't too hard to get into that. But then at Bowling Green, I had a really good career up at Bowling Green. I went up as a freshman and with a bunch of guys, 30 guys came in as scholarship athletes, and about 7 of them graduated. So, but
and it was one of the 7.
Was that? I was one of the 7. Yes.
7, good.
Yeah. So I played 3 years. I mean, I was there as a freshman. I played, and then I was a starter from the first game of my sophomore year on.
And you were All-American there, right?
I was All-American, Sporting News All-American.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I was first team All Mid-American Conference, and two of my most favorite memories of football was I was elected as the most valuable player on my team as a defensive tackle. My teammates selected me as MVP.
Wow.
And then the thing that means the most to me is 2 years later, I went back to watch them clinch a championship game. We never won a championship while I was there. And I went into the locker room because I was an ex-player just 2 years out, and a bunch of guys, half the team gathered around me, and the quarterback says, "Gator," that was me, "just want you to know that this championship is much yours as it is ours, because you're the one that taught us how to win."
Wow.
And so,
yeah,
as an athlete, that's what you want to be able to do.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I always felt it was the whole thing was about commitment.
Right.
And teaching people to win is how I wasn't intentional, but I tried to get other people to be as committed to the success of the program as I was.
That's awesome. What was the biggest team you guys played from the Mid-America Conference, right? The MAC.
Yeah, we played the University of Kentucky, SEC, and we played Iowa State when I was there. We played Vanderbilt the first game of my sophomore year. And the interesting thing is that the defensive tackle from Vanderbilt was Howie Long, who went on to a long career in football and broadcasting.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So really interesting stuff. And
exchange Christmas cards still?
No.
Oh,
no, not much. But
yeah. So that's probably the most famous guy you played against was Howie Long. Yeah.
Well, maybe not. I had a preseason with the Philadelphia Eagles, and I played on the field with. I was on the field one play with Earl Campbell.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and then Ron Jaworski and those guys played for Philadelphia when I was there.
Now that was before Reggie White.
Yes.
Okay, but that was Dick Vermeil.
Yeah, you got it. That's when he was there.
And that was the Invincible movie with Mark Wahlberg. That was trying out for the Eagles team.
Just a couple years after me is when that happened.
Okay, well, that's awesome.
Yeah, so a lot of stories, a lot of good stuff, a lot of I think the thing I like most about football is competing with the fellas, you know, just having a goal and a mission, and the relationships that builds around that I think is really interesting and heartwarming, maybe.
Right.
But I like that. I like being part of a family, part of a group, part of a church, you know.
You're still a football fan. You're a Browns
Yeah.
fan, right?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, so I'm already starting to worry about what's going to happen in the fall. Are they going to cancel games or anything crazy like that?
I have a feeling maybe we'll get lucky and they will, and we won't have to watch the Bengals or the Browns play.
Well, that's true. I had my Browns jersey on this afternoon, and I took it off to sit down with you.
You should have kept it on.
You should have.
So you went from Bowling Green. Eventually, you ended up at Asbury. How'd you end up at Asbury?
Wow, that's quite a story. So Asbury, people who may not be aware, it's a Wesleyan seminary down in Kentucky, and it's a tremendous school. Holiness, just the scholarly part of Asbury is outstanding. I mean, it's one of the best of its type anywhere. So I'm trying to keep it down to a minute or two, but basically it happened like this. Jenny and I were together, and we lived in a little town outside of Buckeye Lake called Millersport. And we had bought this little house, and Jenny had sunk her money into it, cash money, and I came in on that. I had just come home from working in the United Arab Emirates for a year, and we got in on this house, and I was out of work. Crazy time, but you figure that anybody can, you know, earn a couple bucks. But I found that, you know, no matter how much I lowered my sights, that I couldn't find work. You know, I was college educated, and so a lot of places didn't want to hire somebody that would maybe leave them and what have you. So it was kind of a struggle. We were in a financial struggle, and I was working hard, and I'd been successful in pretty much everything I'd done up to this time in my life. And I came home one day from looking for work, and I walked in the door, and there was Jenny sitting on the couch, and she was crying. And I'm like, Jen, what's up? What's the matter? And she handed me a letter from our mortgage company that said they'd put off enough payments, and that we had 30 days to pay in full all the back that we owed, or at that point they were going to foreclose. And I felt really bad. I felt very much like failure, because, you know, I felt like I let her down. I just kind of put my head in my hands and walked up the stairs of our little house in Millersport. And at the top of the stairs, I was just broken. You know, I grew up as a Christian. I hadn't been to church in a number of years, and like a lot of young people. And I just fell down on my knees and cried out, literally cried out, God help me, I don't know what to do anymore. And when I did that, it was as if, I don't know, I say it like this, and it sounds trite, but it's really an expression of how I feel about it. I just got washed over with a warm wave. I just, the Spirit came upon me is about the only way that I can say it theologically. And I had this experienced this vision, this knowledge that came upon me over the course of time. I spent probably an hour on my knees at the top of the stairs with God, and didn't have anything to do with any churches or anything like that. But I did have a Christian background, so I just, at that point, God showed me that he loved me, and he knew everything about me. There was nothing hidden from him. He showed me things and told me things. And I began to realize that God's love was beyond my understanding, but it was unconditional, that God loved me, that other things that I was ashamed of that I'd done and where I'd fallen short, and God was like, I understand. He showed me where I went wrong and all these crazy things. But I knew, just to shorten the story, I knew that when I stood up from that time with God, that I was going to be okay.
That's great.
That I didn't know what was going to happen, but I knew for an honest to goodness fact that there was a God. It wasn't a theoretical, that there is a God.
Right.
And that God loves me.
Wow.
And will be with me no matter what I go through. So that's kind of brought me into this thing. I said, what are we going to do with this? And that is the next Sunday coming up, I'm going to have to go to church. This was this was February 8th, 1988, and it was a Thursday. And so we had this little Methodist church down at the corner that used to wake me up every Sunday morning with its stupid bell. And I said, well, I'm going to church down there Sunday. So my problem is still there. I'm still going to lose my house because I don't have the money. Don't have any prospects for getting the money. But I knew that, even if I lost the house, even if I lost Jenny, no matter what happened out of this situation, that God still loved me and I was okay. So I had peace.
Wow.
Next morning, so I've got this in my heart already. I know what the Lord has done, and this is, part of me now. Next morning, I get up and I'm ready to go. Oh, I jumped ahead and I came down from the stair, and I told Jenny, I don't know. Everything's going to be all right. It's going to work out. I don't know how to tell you. God just told me it's going to work out. So anyway, next day, Friday morning, I got up and took a shower, getting ready. I don't know. I'm going to go places. I'm going to go do something to find a job. And I got out of the shower, and there was a blinking light on my message machine that tells you how old I am. And I called it back. I spoke to a woman named Pam from Ohio Industries for the Handicapped, and she said, "Oh yeah, I got your resume here, and I'd like to have you in next week for an interview." And I said, "Well, you know what? I'm free this afternoon. What do you think?" She said, "Sure, come on in." So I drove in from there to North Columbus, and met with her. And long story short, she told me that later on, after I had been hired there, that it was the weirdest thing, Todd. You walked in the door and I knew I was going to hire you. And so that's crazy enough right there. I get a job that next day. But the manager, a guy named Ed Summers, he was a great guy, kind of crotchety old fella, but heart of gold. And he was, he heard of the story through somebody else I shared with at work. and came and asked me if this was true about me losing my house and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. He said, well, I'm going to give you the money and I'm going to take it out of your paycheck. And so he did that. And I went and, went and deposited a check in my account and settled up with the bank, and we kept the house for until a couple years later when I went to Asbury. It was amazing. But how I got to Asbury from all that, and I can't tell how I became a pastor without telling how I became a real Christian. And I went to a church, I went to that little Methodist church, and those people there were beautiful people. It was a beautiful church. And it was, the people loved us and they welcomed us, and no phoniness. They knew we were baby believers, and Jenny had been waiting for me to be willing to go to church. She'd been willing all along. But, and invited us in, welcomed us, and as I grew in faith, they allowed me to do more things in the church, and it was and then one day my pastor, who would have lunch with me said, hey, Tom, something, and you don't have to answer in a way that you think I would want you to answer. Just be honest with me if you would. And I'm like, oh, sure, Tom, I'll do that. What's up? He said, have you ever thought about being a pastor? And I'm like, yeah, why do you ask? And he said, well, I've been doing this for 30 years, and I've only a couple of times in my career I've actually gone to people, but I really see in you the gifts and graces of what it takes to be a pastor. I'm like, wow. Well, I just, frankly, I haven't, lived the greatest life, and, I'm not sure God wants me to be a pastor with all this baggage. And he said, do you believe in forgiveness? Well, of course I believe in forgiveness. He said, well, God forgives you. If he's calling you to ministry, then you need to do something about that.
Wow. And
so the United Methodist Church has a process for how this goes. So I made the first little toe dip into it, and eventually connected me with Asbury, and I went down there to check it out. And I had been out of school for a while, so I had to take some tests to get in. I did that with flying colors, and it was there was one hang up though, is then we couldn't sell our house. So I had to move, it was a couple 100 miles, from Buckeye Lake to Lexington, Kentucky. And so we're going to sell our house to move to Wilmore, and they call it the Holy City. And we moved to Wilmore. And so it was another year, and got to the point where I just had to say, I'm either going to do this or I'm not going to do it. So I'm not going to, I'm going to go and, trust the Lord and see what happens.
Wow.
And so 2 weeks after I was down there, one of the ladies in our congregation there in Millersport bought our house, just for cash. She just wanted to move out of the country, move into the little town. And wow. So she left her farm and moved into our little house. And Jenny and the boys, Lucas and Mitch, moved down to Wilmore with me. That's how I ended up at Wilmore in Asbury Theological Seminary.
Let's talk about your family before we talk about ministry, because I think family's always first, and I think you've got an awesome family. Tell us a little bit about your family.
Okay. Jenny and I met in Cleveland, and we we ended up starting our family in Millersport, the town I just told you about. And
Right.
so we had our first baby 9 months to the day after we were married. And that was Lucas, and he was, it's always special, as you're aware, when your first one comes along. Just the experience. I don't think your child is more special, but the experience of your first child is really, really interesting. And
Yeah.
And so then Mitchell came along year and a half later, and so he was doing well. He was as people who don't know, Mitchell has severe autism, and he's highly nonverbal, but he actually started out as a normal kid, and then lost those abilities. So it's just one of those odd things, and I'm not going to speculate what may or may not have been the cause of it. Nobody knows, but in any case, so we've got our two kids, and we're down in Wilmore as a little family, and Mitchell. Well, we say it, Mitchell became Mitchell. He went from being a normal kid at about 2.5, being a normal kid, to a mess, and that's the kind of a trauma that we still resonates with us. However,
a beautiful mess.
The if you don't mind, I'm going to tangent here just for a second on a story about Mitch. Mitchell loved letters, the alphabet. He loved the alphabet. He had a little toy, the little plastic letters with magnets that you put up on the refrigerator, and he's went just his first words were actually, he spelled Dumbo we wanted to watch Dumbo, and he spelled Dumbo. So we had no idea he could do that when he did that. So that was fascinating. But one particular day, Mitchell, being the kid who, runs and screams and cries and holds his ears, and one day during church service, Mitchell ran out of the nursery and ran up, threw himself down at the altar. At that church, we had an actual altar type of thing and not an altar rail per se. So at the place of the communion table, he sat down, and the letters for "This do in remembrance of me" were carved into this communion table, and he threw himself down and started touching the letters and running his fingers through the letters of Jesus' words, and just amazing. And so Jenny came following him and grabbed him and ushered him out, and I was sort of embarrassed, and I was still young, and before I knew the things that God can do so much. But so next evening, I get a call from one of the ladies in the congregation. Her son was in ministry in another state and was suffering from cancer, and she was worried about him, and all those things, but strong Christian lady, and she called and said, "Pastor, I just wanted to let you know that I've been kind of dry lately, and dealing with this thing with my son and all that, but when your son came in and threw himself down in front of the table and touched the Lord's words so lovingly, I saw the Lord in a way that I haven't for decades."
Wow.
I felt the Lord's presence there.
Wow.
And I just wanted to let you know that he did that to me, that he touched me in such a special way through your son.
Wow.
And so I'm just so happy you're here and that they're here, that your family's here with you. And Mitchell just blessed me so much. So I just wanted to thank you.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's the however part. That's the beautiful mess.
Yes.
That you know what crazy things go on in a person's life, and that in the midst of it, God is still working.
Yeah.
You know, and even when you don't see it, even when you're crazy with grief over things and worried, God's still working through that. It's so that was you know, that's the start of our family. And I always bring up Mitchell specifically because our life has not been normal.
Right.
You know, I mean, Jenny used to have to take him to therapy every day and do just so much for him specifically. You know, for instance, we still spend most of our evenings at home because Mitch is here, you know, and we can't leave him by himself. You know, and other people can go out. Now we'll never be empty nesters, so that's good. But Lucas was such a good kid, and he worked really hard to take care of his younger brother. And then along came Clay while we were still in southwestern Ohio and southeastern Ohio. I'm sorry. And then Chloe, and so we had our little family of four, and we were in ministry and started going through the Methodist church. You know how they do you and move 3 years, and you know go to that church for 3 years, and then to the next church for 3 years, and so that was kind of our career. But we've always had a close family. I think the faith aspect of it, we've always been Christians, and young people, the kids, their faith doesn't look like my faith, but that's okay. I've been working at it for 30 years, so.
So Chloe and Brock are at church with us. They go to church at Marysville.
Yeah, and they bring Harley and Rory.
Yeah.
And our new addition was just announced that Chloe's pregnant, so we're excited about that. Congratulations, Brock and Chloe. And
that's awesome.
And Rory. Yeah, that's exciting stuff. One of the crazy things that I learned in ministry about family is how beautiful it is to be part of an extended family. And when we went to all these little towns at the Methodist, and there were always these people that, their grandparents lived in the little town. They lived in the little town. Their children lived in the little town. Their grandchildren lived in, and so they're all part of everybody's life. And if you couldn't come home, you could go to grandma's house,
Right,
and there was always people there to take care of you. So we had that opportunity for being in ministry and being kind of a, close-knit, challenged family. And it was, kind of helped to make us close, and in a way that, I wouldn't have if I'd have stayed with my job at Ohio Industries.
No.
So
now you're an ordained Methodist pastor.
I am.
And you
ordination.
served in a lot of different places, serving in a different capacity now than you were. You're not officially pastoring a church, but you're still Pastor Todd.
Yeah, I still am. I'm still ordained Methodist minister, and if I chose to go serve a church, I could. But, in the Methodist church, you have to be itinerant. That means that you go wherever they send you. And our family dynamics with Mitch are such that it's just not practical. We found that out.
And the benefit of that is we get to have you around the Nazarene Church. How did you connect to the Nazarene Church?
I have known some people with that were Nazarenes. I know that Nazarene theology is Wesleyan, very similar to Methodist theology, and we got this house and brought my mother out and needed to have a church, and I felt like the Methodist church was just too big. That's not what I wanted to do. I was a little mad at the Methodist church at the time for not being a little more considerate of my family situation. So that helped me decide not to go to Marysville although it's a great church. Nothing bad about those folks. But we came down there, we went church shopping. Took Mom and Mitch and Chloe, and we went church shopping. And we went to the Naz, and everybody was really genuine, really great there, and
didn't you have
Mom just loved it.
Didn't you have a connection with Steve Knox too? Wasn't that part of that as well?
Well, I think we knew some similar people. I didn't know him before we came there,
okay.
But we had friends in common.
Okay.
So, but we discovered that after we got there.
Okay.
So.
Well, there's so much more we could delve into the ministry. Boy, you've got 30 years of ministry that we could delve into. That's probably time for another podcast. So why don't you share what you're doing now through COVID-19, your good words, your reading, and let people know how they could be part of that.
Yeah, okay. That's great. Thanks. I just felt like crazy led. What can I do? What have I got to offer? And I love the Bible, so I just, Lord laid on my heart to just, share the Bible. So I did to just read the Bible every single day, so that if anybody wants to turn into for the 20 minutes I'm on, or 1 minute, that they could. And so I've got my Message Bible, and I read that about somewhere around 11:15 every day live, and then I repost it later, the recording. But if you're on Facebook, you can join my group by just going to Good Words, Good Words, one letter or one word, and signing up for that, and then I'll obviously let you in. But it doesn't. If you're a friend of a friend on Facebook, you'll automatically go in. But other than that, I'll check you off and let you in, and you can see it live, or listen to the recording just anytime you need a minute of Bible. Something beautiful in your ears. I found that the spoken word is so poignant, and reading it I've found out how much I love to read the Bible out loud. It's a whole different process than just reading it silently.
You do a great job with it. I've caught a few of them. I'm not going to say I've caught them all, but I've caught a few of them, and I've really enjoyed it. And I think our people will enjoy it as well.
Well, thanks. Hit me up on Facebook, Todd Gates, or just go for Good Words, and we'll get you in. Yeah.
Well, Todd, I appreciate the conversation, bud. And
yeah, thanks. Thanks for asking me.
We'll do this again, and have a great day. And I'm going to close this out. Okay.
All right. Let me just say thank you to all the Naz people that have been so wonderful to us since we came in there a couple of years ago.
Hey,
go ahead.
You're great. See you, bud.